Welcome back to Playlist Junkie, where if you own the same songs as I, you can recreate some of the same playlists and listen along with me. My favorite band of all time is Black Sabbath. Now get ready for this because lots of the playlists I have coming up are Sabbath related. There's tons of other bands I listen to, but the rich history of Sabbath inspires an overwhelming amount of playlist ideas that I've made over the years. I want to share the most interesting ones. It's easy, I guess, because they're the forefathers of metal. They have a vintage, naive sound that's effortlessly heavy, with lyrics that stir my imagination like no other. They unintentionally spawned an entire genre of music. Over the span of their career, the band went through several lineup changes. Many people are naturally surprised to learn that there were other singers besides Ozzy. Ozzy, of course, has his own successful solo career outside of Sabbath, and many past members of Sabbath formed their own bands. Many members were in other bands before Sabbath, and from all that, you get this huge family tree. So let's have fun with that. This is going to be a very confusing list. You almost have to be a die-hard Sabbath fan, but if not, you can still enjoy the ride. It's going to get crazy. We're going to go through the history in chronological order, roughly. Here we go. First up, Into the Void by Black Sabbath. This is from the Master Reality album. Oh, those riffs. The sound of Tony Iommi's guitar is the best sound in the world. But anyway, this is your classic Sabbath lineup. Ozzy, Geezer, Tony, and Bill. Next, Highway Star by Deep Purple. This is a great heavy track from one of the other pioneers in hard rock. At this point in time, there's no Sabbath connection yet. The person to take note of here, in the context of our playlist, is the singer Ian Gillan. Next up, Burn, also by Deep Purple. This is after Gillan left the band. He was replaced by David Coverdale, who went on to form Whitesnake. But while he was in Deep Purple, he shared vocals with the bassist Glenn Hughes. Keep that name in mind. Then, Kill the King by Rainbow. After Deep Purple disbanded, the guitarist Ritchie Blackmore formed his own band, Rainbow. There's a lot of colors in this story: black, purple, white. But the singer of Rainbow, the legendary Ronnie James Dio, would cross over into Black Sabbath, the song Heaven and Hell. Here, Dio enters Sabbath, replacing Ozzy and making a new milestone in the band's history. Crazy Train by Ozzy. Just when Ozzy was going off the rails and it seemed like he hit bottom, he launched his solo career and achieved all-new success. Rainbow in the Dark by Dio. Dio leaves Sabbath and starts his own solo career as all our metal heroes branch out and create more awesome music. Zero the Hero, Black Sabbath, from the Born Again album. Ian Gillan joined Sabbath, making the Deep Purple connection. This would be Sabbath singer number 3, if you're sticking with the studio albums. Knocking on Your Back Door, Deep Purple. Gillan leaves Sabbath and rejoins Deep Purple. Seventh Star by Black Sabbath. Sabbath once again uses a singer from Deep Purple, this time Glenn Hughes. Originally, the Seventh Star album was meant to be a Tony Iommi solo project, as he was the only remaining Sabbath member this time, but due to executive pressure, it was still called Black Sabbath. Catatonic Eclipse by GZR. Now we're getting to the other Sabbath members' projects. First up is bassist Geezer Butler from GZR's Plastic Planet album. I chose this one because I really love the intro. Hate by Bill Ward from the album When the Bow Breaks. This is my favorite track from Bill's discography. I love the production on it. Goodbye Lament by Iommi. This is from the first Iommi solo album, at least the first one that was released. Each song on the album had a different singer. This one was Dave Grohl. I think this is a perfect example of how powerful Tony's guitar sounds, no matter how simple the riff. No More Tears by Ozzy. We're revisiting the Ozzy catalog again here, but the key player in our history here is guitarist Zakk Wylde. It's not the first album Zakk played on, but I think this track is a great example of his style. Stillborn, Black Label Society. This is Zakk Wylde's band, so I'd say we're 2 separations away from Sabbath, but Ozzy shares vocals on the chorus. Dopamine by Iommi. Now we're getting into the different reunions where each of the Sabbath singers came back. First on this list is from Tony's Fused album in 2005 with Glenn Hughes on vocals. With all these, I'm skipping over a lot of past reunions. This is all about the most recent ones. From a technical standpoint, I think it's really interesting to hear what they sounded like way back then compared to modern times with newer equipment. Holy Water by Iommi. This had Ian Gillan reuniting with Tony. It was a supergroup collaboration with a lot of other people, including Jason Newsted, Nico McBrain, John Lord, and others. It was a 2-track CD for charity to help those in Armenia affected by the aftermath of the earthquake in '88. This is my favorite of the 2 tracks. The vocals are passionate, and the slow, heavy riff sounds right out of Sabbath. Bible Black by Black Sabbath, or Heaven and Hell. This is from the album The Devil You Know in 2009. This was Dio's final reunion with Black Sabbath. Even though it had the same exact lineup that recorded on the Mob Rules and Dehumanizer albums, they changed the name to Heaven and Hell to differentiate it from the Ozzy lineup of Sabbath. Now we're closing in to the final track of our playlist here. God is Dead by Black Sabbath. This was the long-awaited Ozzy reunion. It seemed like it would never happen, but it did. It's from the 13 album in 2013, and this brings history full circle. You can modify this list however you want. I know there's a lot I left out. I would have included Tony Martin, but I stuck with Sabbath singers that returned to the band in recent history. I'm still eagerly awaiting for any kind of collaboration between Tony Iommi and Tony Martin. That would be great. Glenn Hughes also has another really awesome band called Black Country Communion. There's also the band Elf with Dio. There's Quartz with Jeff Nichols, the longtime keyboardist and backstage musician. There's Bev Bevan, the drummer from Electric Light Orchestra, who was a touring member of Sabbath during the Born Again tour. And if you really want to go back, there's pre-Sabbath bands like Mythology with Tony and Bill, which there exists some recordings, but nothing officially released. I bet you'd enjoy listening to all these songs and soaking in all this history, even if it's confusing.